Commander Jake Morrison stared out the viewing deck of the Star Pioneer as it drifted through the vast emptiness of space. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Federation for almost 200 years now. Jake often wondered what his ancestors would think if they could see him now, floating among the stars and working alongside alien species that once existed only in their wildest dreams. The Galactic Federation was huge beyond imagination. It stretched across 47,000 inhabited star systems and included over 1,800 different species. But everyone knew who really ran things. The Council of Elders had been in charge for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. These 5 ancient species were so advanced that they seemed like gods to most other races. The Zephyrians could read minds and speak to each other across vast distances without any technology. Their blue-skinned leaders would sit in perfect silence during meetings and somehow know exactly what everyone was thinking. The luminals were made of pure energy and could travel at the speed of light by simply willing themselves to move. They glowed with soft golden light and could power entire cities just by being present. The resonants were living crystals that could sing in harmony to create force fields strong enough to stop asteroids. Their music was so beautiful that it made grown warriors weep. The synthoids were half machine and half living tissue, able to interface directly with any computer system and upgrade themselves constantly. They never seemed to age or get tired. Finally, the Voidwalkers could phase in and out of reality itself, appearing and disappearing at will like ghosts made of starlight. Compared to these amazing beings, humans felt pretty ordinary. They had decent technology and were good at solving problems, but they could not read minds or turn into energy or sing asteroids out of the sky. Most other species in the Federation saw humans as one of the younger races, still learning and growing but not particularly special. Jake had to admit this was probably true. Humans were tough and stubborn and good at adapting, but they were not miracle workers like the elder species. That morning started like any other day aboard the Star Pioneer. Jake was reviewing reports from human colonies scattered throughout Federation space when the ship's communication officer, Lieutenant Amy Davis, called out from her station. "Commander, I'm getting some strange readings from the core worlds," she said, her voice tight with concern. "The Zephyrian High Council was supposed to check in an hour ago, but there's been complete radio silence." Jake frowned. The Zephyrians never missed their scheduled communications. Their telepathic abilities meant they could coordinate across vast distances with perfect accuracy. Something was definitely wrong. "Try the Luminal Central Command," he ordered. Amy worked at her console for several minutes before looking up with worry in her eyes. "Nothing, sir. It's like they just vanished." Before Jake could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The main view screen flickered to life, showing Captain Lisa Harper of the human research vessel Terra Nova. Her face was pale and her usually neat uniform was wrinkled, like she had been working for days without rest. "Jake, thank God I reached you," she said quickly. "Something terrible is happening. We were conducting routine scans near the Nexus Prime system when we detected this massive energy wave sweeping through the galaxy. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before." "What kind of energy wave?" Jake asked, though he was already afraid of the answer. "We're calling it the Silent Storm. It hit all 5 Elder homeworlds simultaneously about 3 hours ago. Since then, we haven't heard a single word from any of them, but that's not the strangest part." Lisa paused and took a deep breath. "Jake, we've been monitoring the situation and something impossible is happening. The elder species are losing their abilities." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "What do you mean, losing their abilities?" "The Zephyrians can't communicate telepathically anymore. We intercepted some of their emergency transmissions and they're using regular radio like everyone else. The luminals are flickering in and out like dying light bulbs. The resonants have gone completely silent, no singing, no force fields, nothing. The synthoids are malfunctioning and having to use primitive backup systems. And the Voidwalkers are stuck in physical form, unable to phase shift." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. If the elder species had lost their powers, then the entire structure of galactic civilization was collapsing. These beings had maintained peace and order for millennia through their advanced abilities. Without them, chaos would spread throughout Federation space within days. "Lisa, are humans affected by the Silent Storm?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "That's just it, Jake. We're completely fine. All human ships and colonies are reporting normal operations. It's like whatever this weapon is, it only targets advanced evolutionary traits. We're too primitive to be affected. Jake almost laughed at the irony. For 2 centuries, humans had felt inferior to the elder species. Now their lack of special abilities might be the only thing standing between the galaxy and total collapse. The communication channel crackled with static, and then a new voice came through. It was weak and distorted, speaking in the musical tones of the Zephyrian language. But Jake's universal translator picked up the words clearly. This is High Counselor Zareth of the Zephyrian Assembly. To any humans receiving this transmission, please respond. We are in desperate need of assistance. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he opened the channel. Never in human history had one of the elder species asked them for help. It had always been the other way around. High Counselor, this is Commander Morrison of the human vessel Star Pioneer. We're here and ready to assist. Commander Morrison, the situation is grave beyond measure. The silent storm was not a natural phenomenon. Our final telepathic scans before losing our abilities detected the source. It comes from beyond our galaxy, from entities we have never encountered before. They have used this weapon to neutralize our civilization's greatest strengths as preparation for something worse to come. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. What do you need us to do? The young must now protect the old, Commander. The galaxy is yours to guard. We can only hope that your species' unique qualities will be enough to face what is coming. The Federation emergency protocols are now transferred to human authority. Every world, every species, every life in this galaxy now depends on you. The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at the blank screen in stunned silence. Around him, his crew looked equally shocked. In the span of a few hours, humanity had gone from being junior members of the Galactic Federation to its only hope for survival. Jake straightened his shoulders and turned to face his officers. Send emergency messages to every human ship and colony in Federation space. Tell them to prepare for immediate deployment. It looks like we just became the guardians of the galaxy, whether we're ready or not. Lieutenant Colonel Emma Stone had never imagined she would be sitting in the command center of Nexus Prime, the former capital of the Galactic Federation. 3 days had passed since the silent storm swept through the galaxy, and the situation was getting worse by the hour. Through the massive windows of the command center, she could see ships fleeing the once peaceful world as panic spread like wildfire through the population. The Federation's carefully maintained order was crumbling faster than anyone had thought possible. Without the elder species keeping the peace with their incredible abilities, old grudges and territorial disputes were exploding into open warfare. Emma's communication console buzzed constantly with emergency calls from across the galaxy. Pirates were raiding defenseless colonies, separatist groups were declaring independence, and species that had been enemies before the Federation was formed were going back to fighting each other. Emma rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the holographic display showing the current crisis points. 17 different wars had broken out in the Inner Rim alone. The Krathan Empire was mobilizing its fleets to reclaim territories they had lost centuries ago. The insectoid hive colonies were expanding aggressively into neutral space. Even peaceful species like the aquatic depths dwellers were forming militias to protect themselves from their suddenly hostile neighbors. The worst part was how few humans there were to deal with all these problems. Humanity had never been a major military power in the Federation. They had only about 200 million people scattered across dozens of worlds and space stations. Most of their ships were cargo vessels, research craft, and exploration ships. The human military consisted of maybe 50,000 personnel, and they were supposed to somehow maintain peace among 47,000 star systems. Dr. Alex Turner burst through the command center doors, looking like he had not slept in days. His usually neat scientist appearance was replaced by rumpled clothes and wild hair. Emma had known Alex since their academy days, and she had never seen him so desperate. Emma, I've been analyzing the silent storm data from every human sensor array in the galaxy, he said, his words tumbling out rapidly. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. I found evidence in our deep space archaeological records that entire galactic clusters have experienced similar collapses throughout cosmic history. Emma felt her stomach drop. Are you saying whoever did this has done it before? Many times. The pattern is always the same. A mysterious energy wave targets the most advanced species in a galaxy, neutralizing their special abilities. Then the galaxy falls into chaos as civilizations collapse. After that, there's just empty space where thriving worlds used to be. So what happens next? Emma asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Alex pulled up a holographic timeline showing the pattern he had discovered. Based on the evidence, we have maybe 6 months before the second phase begins. That's when the entities responsible for the silent storm will arrive to harvest whatever is left. Before Emma could respond, Captain Ben Clark's voice crackled through the communication system. Command, this is Guardian Fleet Alpha requesting immediate backup. We've got a situation developing in the mollusk system. Emma activated the main display to see Ben's small fleet of converted cargo ships and research vessels facing down a massive Krathan armada. The enemy ships were sleek and powerful, designed for conquest and intimidation. Ben's ragtag collection of human vessels looked like toys in comparison. Captain Clark, you are severely outnumbered, Emma said. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Negative, Command. The mollusks are peaceful people who never hurt anyone. They've got 3 billion civilians on the surface and no way to defend themselves. We're not abandoning them. Emma watched in amazement as Ben's tiny fleet spread out in a defensive formation around the mollusk homeworld. The Krathan commander opened a communication channel, his reptilian face filling the screen with obvious contempt. Human vessels, you will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. The mollusk worlds belong to the Krathan Empire by right of ancient conquest. Ben's response was calm but firm. Sorry, big guy, but those days are over. The mollusks are under human protection now, and we don't recognize your ancient conquest rights. The Krathan commander laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. You pathetic primitives think you can stand against the might of our empire? We have been warriors for 10,000 years while your species was still living in caves. Maybe so, Ben replied. But we've got something you don't have anymore. And what is that? The element of surprise. What happened next became legendary throughout the galaxy. Instead of engaging in a traditional battle formation, Ben ordered his ships to do something completely unexpected. They scattered in random directions, moving in patterns that made no tactical sense to the Krathan military computers. The enemy tried to predict their movements using advanced battle algorithms, but human unpredictability broke their targeting systems. While the Krathan fleet struggled to lock onto the wildly maneuvering human ships, Ben's vessels used their superior knowledge of improvised weapons. Mining lasers became ship-to-ship weapons, cargo bay explosives turned into missiles, and engineering teams rigged emergency systems to create electromagnetic pulses that scrambled enemy electronics. The turning point came when Ben's own ship, the cargo hauler New Frontier, took critical damage from a Krathan battlecruiser. Instead of retreating, Ben made a decision that shocked everyone watching. He ordered his crew to evacuate to the escape pods while he piloted the damaged ship directly into the enemy flagships. The collision destroyed both vessels in a spectacular explosion that lit up the entire system. But it also sent a message that resonated across the galaxy. The humans were willing to sacrifice themselves to protect people they barely knew. The remaining Krathan ships, their command structure disrupted and their battle computers unable to process such illogical tactics, retreated from the system. The mollusks were safe, and word of the human victory spread through the galactic communication networks like wildfire. Back on Nexus Prime, Emma received reports that similar scenarios were playing out across Federation space. Human ships were showing up wherever there was trouble, often arriving in vessels that had no business being in combat zones. Cargo pilots were becoming fighter aces, scientists were leading rescue missions, and civilian volunteers were joining military operations. The galaxy was learning something important about humans. They did not fight like other species with carefully planned strategies and overwhelming firepower. They fought with emotion and intuition, making decisions that seemed crazy but somehow worked. More importantly, they fought for others, even when those others were strangers from completely different worlds. Dr. Turner looked up from his research station with something like hope in his eyes for the first time in days. Emma, I'm getting reports from across the galaxy. Other species are starting to fight back too. They're copying human tactics and using emotional responses instead of pure logic. The unpredictability is spreading. Emma nodded as she watched the tactical displays showing dozens of small victories across Federation space. Humans were not just holding the line, they were inspiring others to stand up and fight. Maybe 200 million people could guard 47,000 worlds after all. 6 months after the silent storm changed everything, Major General Kate Williams stood in the command center of the mobile starship Guardian Prime, watching holographic displays that showed human forces scattered across half the galaxy. What had started as a desperate attempt to maintain order had grown into something nobody expected. The human Guardian Corps now operated from dozens of mobile command ships, responding to crises faster than anyone thought possible. Kate looked tired, but proud as she reviewed the latest reports. Human ships were everywhere, from the furthest frontier worlds to the densest core systems. They were not just keeping peace anymore. They were actually winning against enemies that should have crushed them easily. The secret was something the galaxy had never seen before in warfare: human unpredictability combined with their strange ability to make emotional bonds with anyone who needed help. The real test came when the Devourers began their next phase of attack. These mysterious entities from beyond the galaxy started sending infiltrator agents to key worlds throughout Federation space. The agents looked exactly like members of local species and could copy their behavior perfectly. Their mission was simple: identify important leaders and military assets, then eliminate them to weaken resistance before the main Devourer fleet arrived. Sergeant Bobby Martinez discovered the first infiltrator completely by accident. He was stationed on the mining world of Kepler 7 when his commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Wilson, started giving orders that felt wrong somehow. Bobby could not explain why, but something in his gut told him the man he had served under for 3 years was not the same person anymore. "Sir, with respect, that doesn't sound like something you would say," Bobby told his commanding officer during a tactical briefing. The fake Wilson smiled in a way that looked right but felt wrong. "I'm just adapting to our new situation, Sergeant. We need to be more flexible in our thinking." But Bobby had grown up in a large family where everyone knew when someone was having a bad day just by looking at them. He trusted his instincts and quietly reported his concerns to Dr. Amy Johnson, the Guardian Corps' chief scientist. Amy had been studying human psychology and alien behavior patterns since the crisis began, trying to understand why humans were so good at reading people from completely different species. When Amy tested the suspected infiltrator, she discovered something amazing. The Devourer agents were perfect at copying logical behavior and speech patterns, but they could not replicate the thousands of tiny emotional responses that made each person unique. They could not fake the way someone's voice changed when they were worried about their family, or how their posture shifted when they were trying not to laugh at a bad joke. "It's like they understand the words but not the music," Amy explained to Kate during an emergency briefing. "They can copy what we do, but they can't copy why we do it. Human emotions and irrational behavior are too chaotic for them to predict or replicate perfectly." This discovery led to the development of the Human Protocol, a simple but effective way to identify Devourer infiltrators. Human personnel would have casual conversations with suspected agents, telling embarrassing stories about their childhood, or asking about their favorite foods. The real person would respond with genuine emotion and personal memories, while the infiltrator would give technically correct but emotionally hollow answers. The protocol worked so well that other species started requesting human observers to help identify infiltrators in their own populations. The galaxy discovered that humans had an almost supernatural ability to detect when someone was not being genuine, even across species barriers. Meanwhile, human military operations continued to achieve impossible victories through tactics that made no sense to traditional military thinking. Commander Steve Davis became famous throughout the Inner Rim when he led a rescue mission to save 50,000 refugees from the dying world of Sanctuary Prime. The planet's sun was going supernova, and the evacuation ships had been destroyed by Devourer saboteurs. Steve arrived with nothing but a small fleet of repurposed mining ships and cargo haulers, vessels that had never been designed to carry passengers. Any logical military commander would have declared the mission impossible and withdrawn. Instead, Steve ordered his ships to land directly on the planet's surface, something mining ships were never supposed to do. "We're not leaving anyone behind," he told his crews as they worked frantically to load terrified refugees into cargo bays and mining compartments. "I don't care if we have to strap people to the outside of the ships, everyone goes home." When the supernova shockwave hit, Steve's makeshift refugee fleet was still struggling to reach orbit. The mining ships were overloaded and barely functional, but they kept flying through sheer human stubbornness and the desperate determination to save innocent lives. Against all odds, every single refugee made it to safety. The rescue of Sanctuary Prime inspired hundreds of similar missions across the galaxy. Human crews would show up in impossible situations with inadequate equipment and somehow find a way to save people. They used cargo nets as passenger seats, turned storage compartments into temporary hospitals, and rigged life support systems to work far beyond their design limits. But the most important human victory came when Colonel Maria Rodriguez ended a three-way war between the spiral arm species through what became known as the Treaty of Shared Sorrows. The crystalline hegemony, the Vapor Collective, and the Metal Brotherhood had been fighting over mineral rights for 2 centuries, and the conflict had escalated into a brutal war that was tearing apart entire star systems. Traditional Federation diplomacy had failed for decades because each species approached negotiations with pure logic and self-interest. Maria tried something completely different. She invited the 3 faction leaders to a human ship and got them drunk on Earth whiskey, while encouraging them to tell stories about their worst childhood memories. By the end of the night, the leaders were crying together about their shared fears and regrets. They realized that all 3 species were fighting because they were afraid of being abandoned and forgotten, not because they actually cared about the mineral rights. The peace treaty they signed was based on mutual protection and cultural exchange rather than resource division. The galaxy watched in amazement as humans achieved victory after victory using methods that should not have worked. Captain Tony Lee became a legend when he faced the first major Devourer advance fleet at the Battle of Kepler's Gate. His tiny human force was outnumbered 10,000 to 1 by ships that were technologically superior in every way. Any reasonable military commander would have retreated immediately. Instead, Tony loaded his entire fleet with improvised nuclear weapons and ordered a direct charge into the center of the enemy formation. The sight of humans willingly sacrificing themselves for strangers they had never met broke the Devourer battle computer algorithms and forced the entire enemy fleet to retreat. Word of the victory spread across the galaxy in hours. Species that had given up hope started fighting back with renewed determination. The message was clear. If humans were willing to die for the galaxy, then maybe the galaxy was worth saving after all. 2 years had passed since the Silent Storm changed the galaxy forever, and Fleet Admiral Chris Thompson found himself commanding something that had never existed before in galactic history. From his flagship Guardian's Hope, he looked out at a fleet containing ships from 847 different species, all united under human leadership. The sight still amazed him every day. The human Guardian Corps had grown far beyond what anyone thought possible. What started as a few hundred human ships desperately trying to maintain order had become a massive coalition of worlds working together for mutual protection. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now fighting side by side, all because humans had shown them something they had forgotten during the long peace under the elder species. They had shown them how to fight for something bigger than themselves. Chris reviewed the daily reports streaming in from across the galaxy. Human-led fleets were protecting trade routes in the Outer Rim, while mixed-species crews ran medical supplies to plague-stricken worlds in the core systems. Former pirates had become escort captains, protecting the same cargo ships they used to raid. Ancient warrior cultures had rediscovered their honor by defending peaceful colonies instead of conquering them. The transformation was incredible, but Chris knew it was about to be tested like never before. Intelligence reports from Dr. Nicole White's research teams painted a terrifying picture of what was coming. The Devourers were mobilizing their harvest fleets, massive collections of ships designed to strip entire star systems of all life and resources. Worse yet, their agent networks were preparing to activate sleeper cells on thousands of worlds simultaneously. The plan is brilliant in its simplicity, Dr. White explained during the emergency command meeting. They'll create so much chaos across the galaxy that we can't possibly respond to everything. While we're running around trying to put out fires, their harvest fleets will consume entire sectors unopposed. Chris studied the tactical projections on the main display.
Even with all their allies, humanity had perhaps 50,000 combat-effective personnel scattered across the galaxy.
The Devourers were preparing to attack thousands of worlds at once. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. There was no way they could be everywhere they needed to be. But Chris had learned something important during his 2 years as a galactic guardian. Humans did not win by being logical or having superior numbers. They won by refusing to accept that something was impossible. Dr. White, you said the Silent Storm's effects are starting to wear off. How long before the elder species regain their full abilities? Nicole pulled up her latest research data. Based on my calculations, we're looking at maybe 6 months before the Zephyrians can use telepathy again. Maybe 8 months before the Luminals can travel at light speed. The others will take even longer. Then we hold the line until they recover, Chris said simply. Send word to every human commander in the galaxy. We're implementing Operation Guardian's Shield. General Paul Anderson, Chris's second-in-command, looked at the operational plan with obvious concern. Sir, this calls for spreading our forces across every inhabited system simultaneously. We'll have maybe 1 or 2 ships per sector. If the Devourers concentrate their forces anywhere, they'll overwhelm our people easily. That's exactly what they're expecting us to think, Chris replied. They're counting on us trying to defend everything with traditional military thinking. But we're not traditional military, Paul. We're Guardians, and Guardians don't abandon their posts no matter what. The orders went out across the galaxy that same day. Every human ship, station, and soldier spread out to cover as much territory as possible. Transport vessels became patrol craft. Research ships turned into early warning systems, and civilian volunteers joined military units wherever they were needed. It was the most ambitious military operation in galactic history, and it should have been doomed to fail. But something unexpected happened as human forces took their positions throughout the galaxy. The species they had been protecting for 2 years decided they were not going to let their guardians face the final battle alone. Commander Janet Foster, stationed at the edge of wild space with nothing but a converted cargo ship and a crew of 20, suddenly found herself commanding a fleet of 200 vessels from 15 different species. We heard you humans might need some backup, said Captain Krieg of the Insectoid Defense Force as his ships took formation around Janet's tiny vessel. You've been protecting our colonies for months now. Time we return the favor. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as former enemies became allies and peaceful species picked up weapons for the first time in centuries. The galaxy had learned humanity's most important lesson. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is protect someone else instead of yourself. Captain Rick Hayes discovered just how much the galaxy had changed when his patrol group encountered a Devourer advance force near the Centauri trade routes. His small fleet of human ships was joined by vessels from the Mollusk Defense Corps, reformed pirates calling themselves the Freedom Fleet, and even a squadron of Krathan warriors who had abandoned their empire to fight for the Federation. This is Captain Hayes to all ships, he broadcast as the enemy force approached. Remember, we're not just fighting for our own worlds anymore. We're fighting for everyone who believes the galaxy is worth saving. The battle that followed became known as the Miracle of Centauri. Rick's mixed fleet used every trick humans had developed over the past 2 years. They fought with emotion instead of pure logic, used unpredictable tactics that confused enemy targeting systems, and most importantly, they fought as one unified force instead of separate species with different agendas. When Rick's flagship was destroyed by enemy fire, a mollusk captain immediately took command. When that ship fell, a reformed pirate stepped up to lead the fleet. The battle continued for hours with command passing from species to species, but the mission never changed. They were Guardians, and they would not let the enemy pass. Meanwhile, the most important discovery of the war was happening in Dr. White's laboratory, aboard the research vessel Deep Thought. She had been working frantically to understand the silent storm's effects when she made a breakthrough that changed everything. I can reverse it, she announced during an emergency conference with Chris and his commanders. The silent storm weapon works by disrupting the quantum frequencies that allow advanced evolutionary traits to function. If we can generate a restoration wave on the same frequencies, we can undo the damage instantly. The catch was devastating. Deploying the restoration device required someone to fly directly into the heart of the Devourer command fleet and activate it manually. It was a one-way mission with no possibility of survival. Before Chris could ask for volunteers, hundreds of voices came through the communication channel. Every human in the galaxy wanted to make the sacrifice that would save their new galactic family. But it was Colonel Danny Rodriguez who made the decision for all of them. I'll do it, he said quietly. I've been flying suicide missions since this war started, and I'm still here. Maybe it's time I actually completed one. The final battle for the galaxy began at the edge of Earth's solar system, where Fleet Admiral Chris Thompson commanded the largest military force in recorded history. Ships from hundreds of species stretched across space in formations that would have been impossible 3 years ago. Former enemies flew wing to wing, united by the simple human idea that some things were worth fighting for even if you might not survive. The Devourer harvest fleet emerged from the darkness between galaxies like a nightmare made real. Their ships were massive, dark structures that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There were thousands of them, each one larger than anything the galaxy had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, their advance calculated and relentless like a machine designed for one purpose: to consume everything in their path. Chris stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the enemy approach and felt the weight of every decision that had brought them to this moment. 3 years ago, humanity had been a minor species in the Galactic Federation, barely worth notice by the great powers. Now they were leading the defense of civilization itself against an enemy that had destroyed entire galaxies. "All ships, this is Admiral Thompson," he broadcast across the massive fleet. "Today we fight not as separate species, but as one people defending our home. The enemy thinks they understand us, but they've never faced anything like what we've become together. Let's show them what the galaxy looks like when it fights as one family." The battle began with the Devourers launching waves of smaller attack craft, testing the defenders' formations and looking for weaknesses. But the galaxy had learned to fight like humans over the past 3 years. Instead of rigid battle lines and predictable tactics, the Allied fleet moved like a living thing, flowing around enemy attacks and striking back from unexpected angles. Captain Laura Miller commanded a mixed squadron of human, mollusk, and reformed Krathan ships that danced through the enemy formations like schools of fish avoiding predators. Her tactics made no sense to the Devourer battle computers, which had been programmed to expect logical military responses. When she ordered her ships to scatter and regroup in seemingly random patterns, the enemy targeting systems couldn't keep up. "Remember, fly angry," she told her pilots, using the phrase that had become famous throughout the galaxy. "These things came here to hurt our people, and we don't let anyone hurt our people." The battle raged for hours as more and more Devourer ships poured into the system. Every time the defenders seemed overwhelmed, another species would arrive to reinforce them. The peaceful depths dwellers brought hospital ships converted into mobile weapon platforms. The ancient stone speakers emerged from their mountain worlds, with vessels carved from solid asteroid, slow but nearly indestructible. But Chris knew they were fighting a losing battle against superior numbers and technology. The real victory would come from Colonel Danny Rodriguez and his desperate mission to reach the Devourer command ship with Dr. White's restoration device. Danny piloted his modified fighter craft through the chaos of the battlefield, dodging massive energy beams and swarms of enemy interceptors. His ship had been stripped of everything except engines, life support, and the precious device that could restore the elder species' abilities. It was a one-way trip, and everyone knew it. "Guardian Prime, this is Danny," he reported as his ship took damage from enemy fire. "I'm through their outer defenses and approaching the command vessel. Tell everyone back home that it's been an honor serving with the best people in the galaxy." Major General Kevin Brown, coordinating the battle from a damaged transport ship after his command vessel was destroyed, watched Danny's fighter disappear into the massive Devourer flagship. "All ships prepare for possible retreat. If the restoration device works, we'll know in the next few minutes. If it doesn't, we make our final stand here." Inside the enemy command ship, Danny fought his way through corridors filled with creatures that looked like living shadows. The Devourers were not truly alive in any sense that other species understood, but they were intelligent and utterly ruthless. They had consumed countless galaxies over millions of years, always following the same pattern of neutralizing advanced species before harvesting their worlds. But they had never encountered anything like human determination before. Danny reached the ship's core despite being wounded and outnumbered, driven by the knowledge that everyone he cared about was counting on him. As he activated the restoration device, he opened his communication channel one last time. "This is for everyone who believes the galaxy is worth saving," he said as the device began to charge. "We are the guardians of this galaxy, and we will never stop fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves." The restoration wave erupted from the Devourer command ship like a star going nova, spreading across the galaxy at faster than light speed. In seconds, it reached every system where the silent storm had struck 3 years earlier. The effects were immediate and spectacular. On Zephyrian Prime, the telepathic network suddenly blazed back to life as millions of minds reconnected across space. The Luminal Central Command became a beacon of pure energy, that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Resonant worlds began singing in harmony that created force fields strong enough to stop entire enemy fleets. Synthoid repair networks came online and began upgrading every allied ship in real time. The Voidwalkers phased Devourer vessels out of existence with casual ease. The tide of battle turned in minutes. The Elder species, restored to their full power after 3 years of helplessness, threw themselves into the fight with fury that surprised even their human allies. But they fought differently now, not with the cold efficiency they had used before the Silent Storm, but with the emotional intensity they had learned from watching humanity defend the galaxy. The Devourer fleet, faced with enemies they could not predict or counter, began their retreat to extragalactic space. But High Counselor Zareth of the Zephyrians had a message for them before they left. "Tell your masters that this galaxy is under new management," he broadcast telepathically to the fleeing command ships. "We have learned from our human friends that some things are worth any sacrifice to protect. If you return, you will find us ready." In the aftermath of the victory, the Galactic Federation restructured itself completely. The Council of Elders expanded to include a permanent seat for humanity, but the humans proposed something different. Instead of fixed leadership, they suggested rotating authority based on who was best suited for each crisis, with guardianship shared among all member species. Admiral Thompson addressed the new Federation Council 5 years later, looking out at representatives from over 2,000 species, many of whom had joined after hearing about the galaxy that fought for strangers. "We never wanted to rule the galaxy," he said simply. "We just wanted to protect it. Now that everyone's back on their feet, we're ready to go back to being the little guys except when someone needs guardians. Then we'll be ready." The galaxy had learned something during those 3 years of crisis. Advanced technology and ancient wisdom were powerful, but sometimes the greatest strength was simply refusing to let others suffer alone. Humanity had not become guardians of the galaxy through conquest or superior evolution. They became guardians by choice, one act of protection at a time, and they had taught the entire galaxy to do the same. Admiral Jake Morrison, now leading a mixed exploration fleet into unknown space, received a distress call from an uncharted system under attack by pirates. His response was immediate and without hesitation. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We have people who need help. Guardians, let's do what we do best." The galaxy had never been safer, because everyone in it had learned the most important human lesson of all. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for someone else, even when they're complete strangers from a completely different world.